That's the way I want to enter. How is everybody doing? Great. Happy Thursday. Welcome to the Poetry Center. Glad everybody's choosing to be here. My name's Tyler. I work here as the director at the Poetry Center, and it's a thrill that you're choosing poetry on a Thursday night in Tucson, which you get to do a lot, but I'm glad you're doing it tonight. So thanks for coming. We are thrilled to welcome back to Tucson a great friend of the Poetry Center, Mark Wunderlich. So a round of applause for Mark's return. A prodigal feeling in this moment. Mark was an interim director of the Poetry Center in the 90s, 95 and 96. And so knows Tucson very well from that time and has a lot of memories. Many people in the audience may know Mark from that time. And so it's a true delight to have him back. His poetry is wonderful, and it's a thrill that the Poetry Center can bring Mark back in this moment. So thanks for helping me welcome him here tonight. I would like to tell you about a couple of upcoming events just to keep everybody in the loop. Our next event as the Poetry Center will be next week, and it's a collaboration with MoCA Tucson, so our Museum of Contemporary Art, and it will feature an exhibit from the poet C.A. Conrad, who's traveling to Tucson, who I think is just actually arriving in Tucson now. And so that event will be on Thursday of next week, but it will be at MoCA Tucson, and the start time will be 1 hour earlier at 6 p.m. So CA will read from their work. There's an exhibit that's connected to this visit called 500 Places at Once, and a new chapbook that's being launched as part of that. So that's all next week, starting on Thursday, 6 o'clock. MoCA, it's a free night for MoCA, so they have an extended evening for folks that might want to be spend more time there, see the other exhibits that are there as well, and a chance to see the exhibit that's connected to that exhibit. Next Thursday, the 19th. Then the following week on the 26th, we're back here at the Poetry Center at 7 o'clock, and we're really excited to have a return visit from the poet Mary Ruefle, who'll be visiting. Her exhibit is here at the Poetry Center, and will open up next week here at the Poetry Center. It is incredible, and it features her practice of creating erasures from found texts that she collects, so books, ephemera, other items, materials, detritus, things that are amazing what she does with them. She treats these texts that she collects, creates erasures or other found texts from within them. The exhibit will delight you, it will stun you, it will make you laugh. It's beautiful. And that will be open next week. And her reading will be on the 26th. And we're very excited about that. That's 7 o'clock back here at the Poetry Center. My notes say to be excited. Please be excited. We're excited. There are ever so few spaces remaining in Poetry Center classes and workshops this semester, including a few seats in an upcoming class with the poet Cynthia Hogue, who's a really terrific poet, critic, scholar, translator, had a decades-long, 30-year-long career at ASU as the Marshall Chair there. And she's teaching a class called What is Mythopoesis? And it's a class, if you're interested in learning about how to handle material that is kind of too close or even maybe too hot, how do you handle those materials in writing? And this is a class that will help you think about that. So if that's something you're interested in, there's some spaces in that class and many others that remain in the Poetry Center's calendar. You can find out more about that on our website or in our calendar of events, which looks attractively like this square. And there's lots of these that are up here, over here on my right. Books are for sale tonight after the reading, as well as some broadsides that Mark has brought with him. So if you're interested in books, it's a little bit farther. If you're interested in broadsides, it's a little bit closer. Broadsides are 10. There's one that's being held up that's delightful and shimmering in the light. And so there's limited numbers of those, and books are for sale as well. Please come bring all of the dollars you brought with you and avail yourselves of both of those things. If you happen to have extra dollars, I will point out this feature that's on the inside of the calendar, which is a donation envelope. So the Poetry Center, of course, runs on the support of the community. So if you're interested in what's happening in the reading series, if you enjoy the reading series, if you enjoy what's happening in our K-12 programs, our classes, if you enjoy the collection and the books and the work that happens there, all of that is funded by donor support, by support from people who choose to make a gift to the Poetry Center. So I hope if you're interested in that, you'll take this envelope and consider what to put inside it and send it back to us. I do want to plug our Whitman Circle, which is a giving level of support. This is an important support level for the Poetry Center, and if that's the right fit for you, we'd love to tell you more about that Come speak with me after the reading. You can learn more about it from the materials that are up here. You get invited to receptions with poets and other perks that come with that support. So happy to talk more about that. And thank you in advance for all that you do for the Poetry Center. This is enough from me. So I'm going to welcome up my friend and colleague, Susan Briante, a poet and essayist here at the University of Arizona and professor of English and creative writing. She's the author of the award-winning nonfiction book, Defacing the Monument. Terrific book. Read that book. And this next summer in August will be her selected poems published by Noemi Press, which we're really excited about and looking forward to. So please help me welcome Susan Briante to introduce Mark Wunderlich.
Look at you. Whoa. Look at you. So nice to see you all. Thank you, Tyler. Thank you, everyone at the Poetry Center, for all the work you do to make all of these things possible. It's like an honor to be able to introduce you tonight, Mark. And I have to say, I kind of went through various scenarios of how to do this in my head. I thought I could just list off, all the amazing awards and things you've gotten: the Guggenheim, the Stegner Fellowship, 2 fellowships from the Fine Arts Work Center, the National Endowment of the Arts, but you could read that anywhere. So then I thought I could just say you have the best hair in poetry, which would entirely be true, but maybe not necessarily visible to the folks in back yet. So I thought maybe I'd start just by reading, I think, 6 lines from a poem, I think it's recent, My Local Dead. I sometimes hear the call to return, come back to the shady valley with its reliable breeze, the crumbling brindle bluffs, a brandy old-fashioned made with 7-Up waiting for me on the sticky bar of the Golden Frog. Recognition registering with those I meet when they see my father looking back from inside my aging face. Even in those 6 little lines, we hear this percussive alliteration, return reliable, brindle brandy, the slant rhyme of bluff and up, and the poignant acknowledgement of the fact that we all eventually turn into our parents in one way or another. And I think that to offer one way to sort of explain all of that goodness packed in 6 lines, I want to refer to a quote from one of Wunderlich's most recent interviews, I think it was recent, where he says very provocatively, I'm interested in writing poems, not poetry. And I think I want to linger on that point because of course it can't be entirely true. I mean, he's the director of Bennington writing seminars, and if you've read any of his other work, you know he knows his way around the world of poetry. But at a moment when poets, like other workers, feel an increased pressure to produce, in some of our cases to the rhythm of academic promotion and the tenure calendar, for others to the manic drums of a viral attention economy, Wunderlich is writing to a kind of different beat. He's writing on the clock of art driven by both immediacy and timelessness. And I take that as I'm interested in writing poems, not poetry, as an interest in process. And I also want to just note, I just use the word timelessness, which I generally dislike a lot. I often think it gets used as this orange construction cone that asks us to detour away from the timeliness of our most immediate concerns. But Wunderlich's poems are anything but a detour. They're knitted out of the materiality of the moment, whether they're inspired by a found collection of German immigrant house poems, as was his collection, The Earth Avails, or inspired by contemporary political imperatives, as in the poem Don't Say Gay, in which he writes, quote, if you think our resolve is meek, we don't care. We dare a life of beauty and of love, of men napping naked on the couch in June with all the windows open to the world, fingers curled into a beloved's hair. There is no end to this, which cannot be unspoken from the air. When the world feels like it is so much, too much to witness and to bear, art can become reactionary to the whims of capitalism, to cultural mood swings, to Instagram influencers. But Wunderlich's poems never do that, because they always reveal a poet more interested in, quote, writing poems than poetry, more entranced with the making. And I'll end with this longer quote about process from Mark. I feel most alive when I'm working on a poem, when all of my subjectivity, all of my faculties, everything I've read, my engagement with the language, the other languages I know, and the world around me are leaning toward me and wanting to be described. All of this goes into the making of a poem. Please join me in welcoming Mark Wunderlich.
Wow, well, it's hard to follow such a generous introduction. Thank you so much, Susan. And I have many thanks to offer here, but I'll keep it very short. But I am so grateful to everyone at the Poetry Center, to Tyler and to Paula and to Julie and to everyone I've been working with, everyone who has brought me here. And this place, I had the great privilege of, I wasn't even really steering the ship at that point. It was a self-driving car, I have to say. I got to sort of sit in the seat for a year, and it was 30 years ago that I was here in Tucson. And I came here and I fell in love with the Poetry Center, with its mission, with what it does, and with the people who made this possible. Tucson is one of the great literary cities of this country, and it is a great joy to return here. So thank you to everyone. I'm going to read poems recent and poems new. So I will begin by reading a couple of poems from my most recent book. This was a pandemic book. It came out in the height of the pandemic, and its publication date, January 6th. There was something else happening that day that drew people's attention away from my important volume of poetry. So anyway, let's just say that every time I get to read from this book, it feels like a birthday. So there you go. I'm going to start by reading the first poem in the book, and the title of this poem is my last name. My last name, Wunderlich. In German, it's pronounced Wunderlich. You will hear it both ways in this poem. And I'm often asked, what does your name mean? Does your name mean wonderful? And no, indeed, that's not what that word means. It's not. So this is a poem about the meaning of my name. Wunderlich. The name means odd. The name means queer. It can denote an odd fish. It suggests a queer chap. Sometimes it means capricious. It can also mean peevish. It's a synonym for singular. It is thought to be poetic. The Pied Piper of Hamelin was called ein wunderlicher Kauz, with his colorful clothing come to pipe the rats away. He drowned them in the Weser, or so the stories go. When the mayor withheld payment, he took the children and drowned them with the rats. Or perhaps they went into the mountains, or they moved to Transylvania. It is 100 years since our children left, says the crumbling book found in the church. That that is what it means to be a Wunderlich. The name means strange things happen to him. It means he can be disputatious. It means he sometimes wears peculiar garments to a party, that as he aged, he seemed younger, less reliable, more in touch with what he would call his soul. You might not call it that yourself. It can mean quarrelsome. It can mean he prefers cats. It can mean he has a gnome tattooed near the hair underneath his arm. It means he loves Christmas like a simpleton. It means makes sushi out of Spam. The name means curious, as in he bought a haunted house, and since weaning, he's not touched a woman's breast. It means he loves the color orange. It means he studied Dutch. It means pancakes for supper once again this week, and that he prefers to knit his own socks. The name means electric organ maestro. The name means famous botanical illustrator. It means the drunken tenor ass over tea kettle down a set of Viennese stairs. It is true there are few of us, that we spread ourselves thin around the globe. Find us making wine in Hungary, herding cattle in Namibia, captaining a ship somewhere off the Chilean coast. My Wunderlichs steamed up the long brown Mississippi in a boat that put them and their peculiarities off in Wisconsin, where the name means a shady farm growing a crop of moss on a roof, an old man with a pistol in his pants, a child who didn't survive and occupies a pagan's ashy grave atop a limestone bluff, where the wind speaks his strange name or worse, voices recognition, an attribution, or a curse. It's fair. I love applause, but I will just ask that maybe you hold it to the end, and we'll but do what you want to do. It's fine. Do what you want to do. This next poem is a poem that, well, apologies to the vegetarians. I grew up on a farm, and this poem is. It's based on a poem that by John Clare called The Badger, which is one of the most harrowing poems in the English language. So that's just a warning. This poem is called Cuthbert. I had a lamb and named him Cuthbert. Cuthbert was what I named my little lamb. I fed him oats and I fed him corn. I fed him on the clover flush with spring. I pet and patted Cuthbert every day, fed him on the brightest summer hay. Cuthbert, little Cuthbert, how he grew. I knew then what Cuthbert didn't know. I trained Cuthbert daily for the fair, led him with a gleaming halter in a ring. Spring drew on and dully led to summer. My little lamb was now a market wether. We took him in a trailer to the show. He bedded down in bright sawdust in his stall. I blackened Cuthbert's pretty cloven hooves. I carded Cuthbert's haunches with a comb. I oiled his black muzzle until it shone. And the day came to take him to the ring. The livestock judge opened Cuthbert's mouth, examined Cuthbert's single row of teeth. He patted hands on Cuthbert's meaty loin, moved us into a single showman's line. The judge returned, walked off, came back again, pulled us from this lineup, and then he said, "This market wether was the finest in his class." That night, I put Cuthbert on the block. The auctioneer sang the money from the crowd. Cuthbert stood tensely, and I was proud. A banker bid the highest for the lamb. I led him through the sawdust to his pen, fed him a laudatory meal in his pan. By morning, the stalls stood empty in a row, and we children were invited to the show of the carcasses of market lambs and hogs, of Hereford steers trained docile as a dog. The bodies stripped of hides hung on their hooks. We filed past them, casting furtive looks. The carcasses, bright surface, white with fat. The room chilled cold enough so that the meat we grew stayed incorruptible and fresh. We exited the abattoir's cold light, and in the concrete hallway was the sight of heads struck dumb and staring by the door under plastic sheeting on the floor, to be taken to the mink farm where we were told for every precious portion had been sold. His head looked out at nothing he could see. Cuthbert, little Cuthbert, you have nothing left for me. So the thing I didn't include in the poem is I was invited to the barbecue and handed Cuthbert on a paper plate. This next poem, I decided to include it because I guess I'm not sure why, but this is part of the Wisconsin death trip of this book. Everything in this poem is true. How about I just tell you that? It's called My Night with Jeffrey Dahmer. My night with Jeffrey Dahmer, like any night spent out in a bar, this one doused in the pink and blue of neon 1989 Formica and brushed metal and the spin of sound in the club. While downstairs in a darker bar where older men enjoyed each other's company and where I had gone to cool off, a man stood next to me and knocked my beer to the floor. So sorry, he was very sorry, hand on my arm as I bent to pick up the bottle, one hand on my arm, the other signaling to the bartender, holding up a finger, then pointing to the empty I proffered, put on the wooden counter, bottle which the keep swept away, replaced, a cold green glass, already sweating a bit, beating in the heat of the basement. He was a stranger, older than I was by a decade or more, blonde and mustached, big glasses, some farmer's son, a bit out of date, stuck as he was in the country, a man driven into the capital to spend a night among others of his kind, away from his mother's kitchen, the chilled hum of the bulk tank, and the cows whose needs were at the center of a life spent in their service. But no, he was from Milwaukee, he said, though to me his words were unimportant. So sorry, I'll get you a new one, let me buy you one. And so he took out his wallet and handed over his dollars. And I suppose I looked to see if he had left a tip, since I always look for this, having done already the work of service, in which you depend on the manners and guilt and sense of custom of those you attend, their generosity, their goodness, their notion of what is normal and right, what to offer to others in exchange for their help, their attentiveness here. Let me buy you a beer. So sorry for my clumsiness. Let me put this hand on your arm. Do you live here? Are you at the university? Do you like the music? Did I tell you my name? His questions, the questions of any curious man talking to a farmer's son in a bar in Madison, Wisconsin, asking my name, which I withheld, my name, which I kept lodged between my teeth, under my tongue, in the pocket of my clavicle, in the scar on my eyebrow, in my belly, in the sack of my scrotum, in my head, my hand, my arm, which he touched lightly, my mouth, my teeth, my tongue, which began to move, unlock, give up its wariness, give in, to say, my name is Mark. What's yours? I'm going to read some new poems, but first I'm going to drink the water. This is the hardest part of the evening. I'm going to read some new poems. This one requires no explanation. I was educated for a life in the provinces. I was educated for a life in the provinces in a place mostly ignored for good reason. Home was a remnant of a forgotten farm onto which my parents built a lopsided house. On a corner field once planted in red clover, which hummed with the authority of the neighbor's 9 hives, with the autumn violin of crickets, nighthawk lonesome and whistling in the brush. I was taught by example and by decree, which wasn't always nice. Here is how to trap the mice in the tin cat, how to drown them in a 5-gallon pail. Here is how to climb the rail fence and not catch your parts on the crown of barbed wire. Higher, a little higher. In church, I learned of St. Martin betrayed by a goose, St. Lucy serving her eyes on a plate, Job face down on his heap of ash, and Lot leaving his salty wife to crumble in the dust. Taken to the Prairie Moon Museum, we marveled at Old Man Rush's world of concrete, the Tower of Babel, Daniel Boone stabbing an unlucky bear, a cement python with a tin-snip tongue forever tasting sand prairie air. Rush sat next to his wash boilers full of snakes, a pot choked with a live snapper, Quonset huts stuffed with the miraculous things, arrowheads, a 100-foot grapevine, taxidermied fox and rabbit eternally trapped in a log. In school, I learned of the Peshtigo fire, how to make pudding, how to build a little shelf. I learned the breeds and colors of every kind of cow, which sheep to graze in an orchard, which on rough range, whose wool had better crimp, which grew the best marbling in the meat. On the class trip to the chick hatchery, we saw the sea of yellow fluff peeping down a chute, picked and poked with a vaccine, beak tips shorn with a hot wire, the halt and the lame falling to a bin to be ground into mush for the minks. I learned squeals. I learned stinks. At 15, I was behind the wheel of a truck. It was my job to keep in a state of miraculous repair, keep unstuck. I was taught much for a life everyone thinks I left behind. Where is behind? Just what has been abandoned? Wherever I am prepared to reap or to kill, to castrate or to shear. I am there, here, still. Okay, so the next 3 poems I had a little more fun with, I can say, and these are very fresh. They're still damp. I gave myself, I talked about this in the class that I visited, actually, in Claire's class, and I talked about giving myself assignments, and I was on Cape Cod, and I was teaching in the morning. In the afternoons, I had time off, and so I'd go to the beach, and as I walked down the beach, I would give myself the assignment to come up with the first line of a poem, and then when I found my spot on the beach, I would sit down and write that poem, and these next 3 poems are ones that I did. They don't really have titles. The first poems were composed, and so the beach figures into these as you read them, and I've given them a not-so-great title, but it's From Herring Cove, number 1. Oh, just a gloss. I refer to a film, Lucchino Visconti's film of Death in Venice, in which the character of Aschenbach goes into a great decline. It's a fabulous film. From Herring Cove. The dead are so much easier to love. They don't appear uninvited in your yard, ask for favors, get mad. Instead, they are a bit like the seal I barely glimpsed at the beach. No one with me, so mine alone. black head cresting from a wave, and so big I thought it was a serpent or a small whale. But no, just a seal, just revealed, emerging from its vast, unknowable realm of wet salt, tides, force. My first time in Venice, I hardly ever knew what I was looking at, except for lunch. Sometimes I had an eerie hunch I was being followed as I went up one wet little bridge, then down, taking my slick and clueless walk to some church. Later, I would lie in a humid and narrow bed, my face melting like Visconti's Aschenbach, my mind sketching in a stranger waiting for me next to the green, fetid waterway downstairs. Who cares if ghosts exist? They're still dead. Only our attention keeps them fed. From Herring Cove. I gave myself to art, which I regret. I should have given myself to trees or to whales or to soil. Perhaps I should have pledged my troth to an ennobled horse, toiling with its hay, lifting its dung reverently on a fork. The problem with art is artists. And by artists, I mean poets. My second night in New York, age 21, I met Allen Ginsberg at a party. He shook my hand, pulled me in close, brought his other arm around my back, and wedged a paw down my pants in the rear. I kept staring at his tangled beard, squirmed and laughed like a fool, with a little fear. A finger pressed rough into my bung, there at the reception, in front of everyone. Did you know Ezra Pound sent his only daughter to go live with German peasants in the Alps? There she used her one wooden spoon to slurp liver dumpling soup from a communal bowl, while her father swanned around Venice in a cape. Make it new, he threatened, and so we do. Pound's grandson lives alone in a castle. He gave his life to castle upkeep and to a herd of goats, sweet lizard-eyed creatures browsing on the slopes. The rest of us are dopes. From Herring Cove. I have 6 gold teeth in my head. If things get bad, they come out. Keep me fed on sailor's biscuit and gin. Recently, I got thin, having lost the weight of one small child. I don't miss her, that little tot made of fat, exiled pound by pound, breath by breath, each day a little lighter in the loafers, a little less tight in the suit. Treaty num-num, I made you out of boredom, out of sadness, out of English muffins and of beer, but also joy, mixed nuts, a little fear. Today I lie upon the sands of Cape Cod, exposing my mixed parts to the sun. Midnight breakfast, mortadella, Swedish pancake, cake for lunch. I liked you going down. You were fun. But like these gulls and piping plovers, forever hungry, I watch you run. This was also written at the beach. It's called Father's Day, and it was written on Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to the bums, to the ghosts, to the crooks. Happy Father's Day to the ragers, to the drunks, to the sops. To those who stopped sending the support checks, forgot Junior's big game. Happy day. To the dad who shaved his weeping lad's head, leaving little nicks with the dull blade. To the one who paid a tart to get his minty boy laid. Happy, happy day. To the angry cop stomping while his son hid in the dust underneath the porch, or threatened to shoot his girl from the tree she climbed, the one who in the bath put a rough-nailed finger up his boy's pretty pink behind, today is your day. To the one who sat on the edge of the bed to tell the kids he wished their mother dead, we remember you. Your moods and your smells, your love like a pale thing creeping at the bottom of a well. If there's a hell, it's full of dads. So sad. And we, their childless children, it all stops here. Kids, you're in the clear, the high, clear air. That is nothingness, blameless and brainless, because you are lifeless and ageless, coming into this world only on this page. Your little undone life, no wife, no strife, not anything at all. Last call at the empty airport bar. We're all just a burnt-out star, and Dad is dust and sand in a sack, a black spot in the road, a toad I rode over with the Jeep. I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to at all. Eating the horse. I was served the horse steak, and it came on a sizzling stone. I wore a bib to keep the fat from spoiling my shirt. The steak was the size of my hand, and it bubbled as the tissues were cooked and the juices ran and steamed up on the stone as the meat began to retract. The blood cooked out of it, as did the paddock where the horse had lived, which no one cleaned, that and the cold meadow he was born in. Last winter was seared from the meat, as was the timothy hay, which was moldy, as August had been damp and the roof had leaked. The horse's dam was still alive then, though her teeth were bad, and she slobbered when she chewed. I bit down on what remained of his indifferent owner, the pinworms and botflies abundant that June, the clover he preferred, and the little sour apples that fell from the neighbor's unpruned tree. I ate the last trailer ride to the auction where the horse's shambling gait marked him for his future on my plate. I ate his entire past, all of it. I ate his sturdy, unloved back. We go from eating the horse to this next poem is called No Horse. I'm sometimes asked why I've always had animals in my life. I don't have pets. Like I don't have any. People ask me why this poem is about why I don't have any pets. I do refer to a French bulldog named Gide, who belonged to the poet Richard Howard. I don't know if anyone, and Gide was a disgusting little creature, but he makes an appearance in this poem. This poem is called No Horse. No horse, no piebald Sicilian donkey, no baby goats gambling on an old cable spool, no cat fat and shedding by the stove, no rooster plumed and cartoonish dashing about the yard, putting a hole in my shin with his spur, no rescued cur, no teacup Pomeranian afraid to walk on grass, piddling on a pea pad like a god. No God either. For that matter, no father. He's all ash. Now mother makes a hash of her checkbook. When she last drove, a small crash. The guinea pigs of childhood whistle from their graveyard at the dump. Gide, the lascivious Frenchie, must hump some other chump. No sheep weep on hilly bourne. No son, not even a little one. No girl curled on gay papa's lap. No way to stop what I've started here. Just steer the goddamn big car. Look out, I shout out the window, but no one hears. Who hears anyway? Who is here anyway? Okay. So this next poem, it has a dedication, but I'm dedicating to Ander Monson, actually. This poem resulted as a challenge, and I will apologize ahead of time. This poem is in terrible taste. And I just have to fully acknowledge that. It arose out of a challenge. I was having a conversation with two wonderful writers, Stacey Durasmo and the poet Danica Kelly. And Stacey was recalling an experience she had of coming across a pornographic novel which was called Morning Glory Farm, a sweet and steamy monster romance book. Now, we were having a conversation as writers about how the kinds of books that sell thousands and thousands of copies, and this is one of them. This book, Morning Glory Farm, a sweet and steamy monster romance book, is one of those. Though she erroneously identified the title, she thought the title was Milking the Minotaur, which is actually the plot. It is a story of a young woman who answers an ad for a job, and she gets this job at a farm where it is where the livestock of the farm are minotaurs. And it is her job to milk the minotaurs, but the minotaurs are male, so she is extracting semen from the minotaurs. It is a romance novel. It has sold hundreds of thousands of copies. And, but I thought this title, Milking the Minotaur, was one of the most hilarious things that I had ever heard. And so Danica said, I think you should write a poem called Milking the Minotaur. And I said to her, I think you should write a poem called Milking the Minotaur. And so we signed a pact that we were both going to do it, and indeed we did. So this is the poem. It is, as I said, it's in very poor taste, but, and it is called Milking the Minotaur. A gloss here, Bear Week. Does anybody know what Bear Week is? Maybe not. Bear Week takes place in Provincetown, Massachusetts, a gay resort where large-bodied and hairy men and those who like them gather all together to appreciate each other, and it's called Bear Week. And Sniffies is a hookup app, a GPS hookup app. I refer to that too, so just Milking the Minotaur. Apologies in advance. Minotaurs aren't real, so they cannot feel it when you milk them, squeezing the hairy teat of myth. And wasn't the Minotaur male in this imaginary mammary fantasy? So maybe milking is extraction in the mode of man-on-man pornography, in which a veiny male member is milked into climax. Do I embarrass you? But you're already here. And poetry is so embarrassing, sometimes in the extreme. Speaking of which, I'm writing this whilst naked on Herring Cove Beach, the story of this bovine fancy reaching all the way down this windy strand. The gods, or so we're told, are dead. They are also amoral, neither good nor bad, just moods, plots, urge. I watch the tide surge against the sandy shore and wonder if I am perhaps a bit of a milky minotaur myself, expressing my imaginary milk with the other monsters gazing on, like at some 60-man Bear Week Sniffies circle jerk. I've always known I was a kind of monster, one whose body is a little ugly and out of control, whose wants are camped well outside convention like some forgotten, moldy, blue tarp Adirondack tent. What are we meant to do with unauthorized desires if we are not, say, some rich, horse-crazy girl braiding and unbraiding her chestnut gelding's mane before straddling him and taking up the crop, whipping him into a frothed-up gallop across daddy's well-groomed terrain? I can't feign ignorance, affect indifference as I don my jockstrap, cock ring, caftan, and pearls. Minotaurs, Medusa, old sycorax imprisoned in a tree. all the monsters end up pursued by some dumb hero, clubbed, beheaded, dead. The myth is there to warn us monsters of what can be done to us or in us or on us, to tell us we are obscene with our horns and hairy tails, our scalp of writhing snakes. Everyone's a fake, except us monsters who are real, or just really bad at hiding from main characters as they blunder confident through their own lives and through ours, their swords raised in bloody triumph as they shame themselves with power. Sometimes we write things because we're pissed off. And this is one of those. This phrase, in Florida, the "don't say gay" policy, what a stupid phrase. Anyway, don't say gay. Don't say gay, we didn't like it anyway. We here writing this all down, accusing you of your grave misunderstanding of history, of the body, of what your sons put in their holes for fun or out of necessity. We won't say gay, won't play at being fey, at staying home with mom who drinks and thinks about driving your new truck into Biscayne Bay. You stay right where you are with your concussed NFL, your blow-up booby doll, your cheesecake factory family-friendly stripper pole, Hooters at the mall. We promise not to say it, not to spray it on your little brother's beard and chin while he grins up at us in the dunes as the sea crashes and smashes the sandy ass of the beach. We'll just teach your children of the Greeks and their manly weaponized love, the beauty of a phallus shoved into a fawn on a black antique vase. Look at our handsome face, which has long since turned the other cheek. If you think our resolve is meek, we don't care. We dare a life of beauty and of love, of men napping naked on a couch in June with all the windows open to the world, fingers curled in the beloved's hair. There is no end to this which cannot be unspoken from the air, will not recede because you wish it to, our multitudes contained, alive, amongst your own small contrived bid to wish us all away. We'll stay, but not with you, lonely, sour old goat trying to gin up hate from the worst of your kind. We find it better amongst ourselves, the beautiful ache of the bent, the queer, the fey, the mint, the fairy, the fag gagging on yet another futile attempt at erasure. We turn our face ensured toward the sun, toward the forgiving sea, toward a triumphant, shell-pink eternity. And I'm going to end with this poem. It's called My Local Dead. This was the time of year we would go into the frozen forest, leaves stripped, only a few birds ticking in the bare trees, fields shorn, corn trash a dull gold. Sometimes snow would fall, and I can recall the exact sound of its muffling, quieting whiteness crackling down. Of our hunting party, only 2 of us are alive, grandparents long dead, father and nephew dead, their bones all on the ridgetop with the others. The town is shabbier now. Middle classes disappeared, leaving the ancient, the angry, and the slow. My brother has returned home to a place he reviled, having run out his luck in the West. His plan is to move into the garage on the old homestead, which of course is no plan at all. I sometimes hear the call to return, Come back to the shady valley with its reliable breeze, the crumbling brindle bluffs, a brandy old-fashioned made with 7-Up waiting for me on the sticky bar of the Golden Frog, recognition registering with those I meet when they see my father looking back from inside my aging face. That place don't fade, the one that made me. Bone isotopes belie the soil's iron and chalk. My talk inflected. Sorry sounds like sore. What's more is that I want to go, but won't. I'll stay here, 1,000 miles away, amidst an older eastern decay. It turns out I have some local dead here as well. 5th great-grandfather Christian Serfos, colonial kraut from the Palatine, who died in some wintertime foolishness crossing the frozen Mohawk. His 2 boys watched him and his horses drown in that not very impressive watercourse. One of those boys made it to Iowa and disappeared, but not before he reproduced, becoming 4th great-grandfather to yours truly, and so on. My remaining colonial dead lie in the dirt near Palatine Bridge, their names effaced from marble by acid rain. I wish I didn't care about them, but I do. It matters to have this ghost clan near, this family I never knew. Thanks so much, everyone. Thank you.
One more big round of applause for Mark Wunderlich. Books are for sale over on the right. The broadsides are up here for sale as well. We'll hope to see you next week at C.A. Conrad reading or at the Mary Ruffo reading after that. The exhibit opens here at the Poetry Center next week. All the details are here on the calendar. Thanks again for coming. Thanks again to Mark. We'll see you all soon.